Just like with the bosses in the game, there are many different types of areas, and it wasn't easy to decide which ones I should actually include. I'm mainly going for what people call legacy dungeons, which are like your classic Souls areas, but as you'll soon see, there might be a few exceptions that might not fall into that criteria. And I also want to say that I probably have not found every hidden path and secret room in every area. I'm sure there's plenty of cool stuff I missed, but I don't want to look shit up since that would just take away the enjoyment of discovering stuff for myself, and that's what it's all about. Also, as a warning, I'm gonna compare a lot to earlier FromSoft areas. Anyway, let's begin with the worst area in Elden Ring. It just had to be Miyazaki-san. I know you love feet, and I know you love poison swamps even more, but you gotta stop doing this to us. Like, what's the most hated area in Demon Souls? Oh yeah, the poison swamp. What's the most hated area in Dark Souls 1? The poison area. In Dark Souls 2? All the areas. Bloodborne, Poison Swamp. Dark Souls 3, Poison Swamp. Sekiro, actually Sekiro doesn't really have any particularly hated areas. Good job, Sekiro. But point is, poison swamps in these games are as much of a plague to our enjoyment of the games as the poison is to our characters. But the poison here is even worse than in most other areas. See, it's called Scarlet Rot, but it's really just toxic from Dark Souls 3, maybe even more deadly. It eats away your health faster than Nikocado eats away his life expectancy. As you can see, the point here is to activate these platforms, but the gaps between them are like purposely designed to be just long enough that you'll get Scarlet Rot before reaching safety. So I typically just run past everything, spam heals, and hope I don't run out of flasks. Then you reach this giant temple called Grand Oyster or something, and while it has less Scarlet Rot to worry about, they copy-paste spammed pests all over it. Everyone hates these things. I personally think a single one of them makes for a decent enough enemy, but for some reason they're always in packs, so they're just tedious and annoying to kill. I love clearing out entire areas methodically, I always do that. So when my preferred tactic is to just beeline straight to the end without fighting enemies, you know it's a shit area. I like the atmosphere of this area, even if it is just Siofra River, however you say it, but red. And it's got one of my favorite bosses in the game, the Lord of Blood. And it's got one of the most nasty, horrible monsters in the entire game, these giant fucked up crows. I know lots of people hate them, but I think they're great. Just looking at them makes me feel both disgusted and a little sorry for the enemy. So I wanna like this area, I really do, but it's really bad. As much as I love these alien-looking guys with their cartwheel maneuvers, having an entire army of them with the added attack that basically turns them into bone wheel skeletons is just obnoxious. At least you can use your horse torrent here, so I once again usually employ my beeline strategy. And that area with the nasty birds is the worst. For no other reason than to annoy you, there's multiple, to my knowledge 3, NPC invaders that can attack you whenever you approach the Blood Lake. They're not the worst part about it either, it's the fucking dogs! Apparently they're just bugged and one of their attacks can one-shot you. And it keeps happening to me. It's so bullshit. And they still haven't fixed it. They nerfed Radahn and not this? Come on guys. Not only are they lazily copied enemies from Dark Souls 3, but now they're even more broken than the teleporting dogs. Great. At least it's an optional side path in an optional area, but I won't let that excuse how awful it is. The rest of the area after that is meh. It's mostly ganky and tedious, even if it's cool to look at. So there's 3 major underground zones, Siofra River, Ainsel River and Deeproot Depths. Lake of Rods and Mohgwyn Palace were both side areas of the first 2, but there's still a lot to those 2 river areas that I want to save for a little later. But as for Deeproot Depths, there's nothing here, just reused enemies that aren't used in any clever or creative ways. Except for maybe the fire-spewing gargoyles up on the roots, that section is decent, but other than that it's mostly just chock full of ants and basilisks. I usually forget this place exists and only come back for it later when I realize I missed the Lich Dragon boss. I really don't know what else to say about this area. It's not really annoying to go through, but the fact that I can think of more to say about the shitty side areas of the other 2 underground zones pretty much shows how uninteresting this one is. Sorry if I'm sounding angry in this video, but buckle up because we've got another assfuck of an area. It's a very random second attempt at making the depths from Dark Souls 1, but I think I like the original one better. They did recapture how confusing that area was though. The pipes in particular are designed like a labyrinth, and that's kinda neat. I don't enjoy fighting anything in here though. The little gargoyles are just thralls from Dark Souls 3 and they suck, and they're just everywhere. The slugs are slugs. The omens are on their own decent, but they just spam them all over the sewers. They put like 5 of them back to back, and I just can't be bothered to kill them all. The ones that use similar curse attacks as Morgoth are pretty cool, but only if it's a one-on-one scenario, which it too often isn't. This here is not my idea of fun gameplay, but there are some redeeming factors to the Shunning-Grounds. Like I mentioned, the labyrinth design is pretty nice. I think the atmosphere is alright too. Definitely feels like this is where the outcast scum belong in, and you should get the fuck out before it's too late. Especially when it has the loathsome Dung Eater. And there's a preview of Morg, and then after that, a secret area that brings back awful memories of the run back to Flame Lurker. It's a cool find, but no thanks. Still, while I don't like playing through here, I like that the area exists in the world. It adds depth to Leyndell, quite literally. Although we are just one spot away from areas that were pretty agonizing to go through, Raya Lucaria is a big step up in quality. This is one of the nicest looking areas in the series. It's like an evil Hogwarts. I recommend coming here at nighttime. It looks so cool with all the lit up windows and shit. Interiors are perhaps even better looking. There's so much detail every step of the way, it's incredible. And as you'd expect, there are also tons of mages inside. They're a fine filler enemy, but I feel like there's a lack of proper foes. There are 2 Iron Maiden statues here, and for a lot of people it'll be their first encounter with those enemies, which will surely be a memorable moment. But I think they're just a really cool design, but otherwise not that engaging. They should have put those magical hammer-wielding elite mages in here, but for some reason they're only seen in Haligtree as far as I know. I think they would be a perfect fit for the academy and make the gameplay a bit more interesting. These gropey ghouls just don't do it for me. Still, it's not like the content here is bad, just that it's mostly a cakewalk. There's a strong contender for top 10 elevators here, there's pot boys that I love smashing, and there's straight up a space elf. They have fuck all for defense, so if you have a heavy weapon, they're pushovers. But I found it creepy the first time when I just saw a nearly naked giant elf walking towards me. So it's a cool area that I enjoy being in, but don't necessarily get excited about playing. Okay, you win me over instantly by making a tree city straight out of Lord of the Rings. But you also lose me right back after said city has nothing but recycled enemies. Aside from the 2 elite mages that should have been in Raya Lucaria. This area is basically divided into 2 distinct sections. First is the Haligtree and the second is Elphael. Haligtree is absolutely stunning, even more so than Elphael in my opinion. The Knight Loretta, who is just a harder version of the many tree sentinels you encounter, gets one of the prettiest arenas in the game, which is saying a lot. They really went all out with the boss arenas in this game. However, the rest of Haligtree takes place mostly on narrow branches, which makes gravity my most feared enemy here. I never really like fighting on precarious ledges personally, it's just annoying and stressful. The recycled enemies are mostly fine, but I feel like they don't really belong here aesthetically. So it's another one of those visually amazing areas with not much fun gameplay. Elphael, however, is full of knights, and if there's one thing FromSoft has gotten better and better at making, it's knights. The Clean Rot knights are some of their best yet, I really enjoy fighting them. The regular lower tier soldiers are decent too, so what's not to love? Oh yeah, the second half of Elphael. It basically turns into a miniature lake of rot. You have to slug through a rot pond that slows you down, poisons you, and has tons of pests underwater harassing you. Thank God Bloodhound Step just completely negates that whole mess. But even after that section, there's still plenty of pests left. Like in this outdoor area, which is just... why? Did they think anyone would want to clear this all out? Again, I love being a completionist and killing all enemies, but fuck this, I'm never going near this place again. Still, whenever you are in the actual non-rot, non-pest city, it's pretty great. Not as open as some of their other cities, but I like it. And also, Melania being here gives me the opportunity to say I like her more now. Great boss, good area. So for this spot I'm including both the horrible ant cave and the pretty Nokstella city. I think for the bits and pieces you get of this area, it's really good stuff. Sure, the ant cave is just awful, but in a good way. It does its job of being nasty really well, and without bullshit gimmicks. Even when the ants spew shit at you, it doesn't poison you, just does pure damage. Imagine that. And I'm happy to say we have a new entry for my top 10 bots in Soulspawn. Thank you, FromSoft. Well, the boss you fight at the end of the cave is a rehashed fight of the many Dragonkin soldiers, which I find pretty tedious. This one is different enough that it makes the trip down there worth it, and I like the phase 2 attacks. Eventually, you may find your way back into the prettier side of Ainsel River, which houses the city of Nokstella. I really like the enemies that use strange whip swords and extendable maces. Just simply fun, unique enemies. And speaking of which, I love the round, sentient, big ball. All it can do is roll at you, but it's just kind of a funny and unexpected enemy type. There's also blobs from Demon Souls, and they're not my favorite, but I like how killing them can cause a massive chain reaction, which you can even use against other enemies. So the city is good, but I do wish there was more to it. How about scrap all the development time put into Lake of Rot, all 5 minutes of it, and instead expand Nokstella? One of the most memorable moments in the game was the elevator ride down into the underground world. Forget what I said about Raya Lucaria's lift, this is the best elevator in Soulsborne Hero Ring. And what you find at the bottom is a beautiful looking foresty area. I love the use of colors here, especially with the fall sky. I like how the stars are closer to you than some of the distant structures and landscapes. It adds a mystique to the environment. However, the primary goal in the semi-open forest is to light these braziers in order to unlock the boss of the area, which is the Ancestor Spirit. It's a pretty cool mystery, but god damn those archers. They're everywhere. I hate them. Then, after defeating Radahn, a meteorite will open up a new path leading into the city of Nokron, which eventually leads to another semi-open forest. And it's basically the exact same as the first one. You light the same amount of fires and you're rewarded with a reskin of Ancient Spirit. The mystery was cool the first time, but doing it again just feels like you're going through the motions. At least the singing goat people do make moving around the forest feel kinda calming. Just being here is enjoyable, even if the task at hand is nothing special. Like in Nokstella, the city portions are short but sweet. This time there's golems from Lord of the Rings and Crucible Knights, which are fantastic enemies. So I would say the gameplay is overall middling, but what I love most about Nokron and Siofra River is just the world building, the discovery of it, the mystique, the ancestral aboriginal spirit vibe. Coming here was everything I want when exploring an open world. I adore Volcano Manor for its aesthetics alone. Thankfully, gameplay isn't holding it back one bit. It's kinda like a Dark Souls 2 area done right. The lava in these games usually instantly kills you or just does a billion damage per second. Here, on the other hand, it's really not that bad if you accidentally step in it. I like that. The snake guys here are really cool enemies, and I haven't seen them anywhere else in the game. They use similar tricks as the Godskin Apostle, which I'm all for. It's kind of wild that this is a really well hidden optional area. I'm not sure why they made it that way. Most people will discover Rykard through a simple NPC killing questline, but I lucked out and found this place first, which does eventually lead you to the Serpent King. It was a much better experience that way, because this whole place just reeks of evil. There's pools of blood on the streets, you can see cages underneath a bridge that can be lowered straight into lava, so you can guess what that's for. There's bloodborne enemies? They look a little too familiar. And not to mention, this place at times is just straight up Mordor. All of it builds up well for a boss fight that feels like it takes place in the depths of hell. No doubt in my mind, Stormveil is among FromSoft's best designed castles thus far. It might even be the best design-wise, even if I prefer the aesthetics of some of the others. It's got nice replay value too, since you're provided the option to either storm the main gate or use the secret passage. Obviously, the secret passage is the better alternative. You'd be insane to choose to head straight on your first playthrough, but it's possible. You can do it if you want to. It's all up to you. It's a ballista gank nightmare, but you can't say you weren't warned. The other path will lead you to what really feels like Boletaria, especially the first indoor section with enemies throwing bombs at you. Feels pretty much the same as the beginning of Demon Souls. But other than that, the castle is unique enough to stand on its own 2 feet. Except, I don't think castles have feet. But then again, it's Miyazaki, so maybe it does. Speaking of feet, I don't like the birds with sword legs. They're pretty annoying enemies, especially the ones that breathe fire at you. Somehow. How did they train these birds to do this shit? They're not really bad enemies though, just annoying. I wouldn't delete them or anything. The highlight for combat here is, of course, the Elite Knights. These guys that summon wind to aid them in battle are really fucking tough for early game, but they're cool. I like how the knights and soldiers of each major region reflect what kind of powers their demigod uses. It's nice foreshadowing in a way, and makes sense. I would love the part with the nightmare crab spider guy with arms everywhere, if it wasn't the first enemy in the game. I think they should have done a different intro and saved that reveal for Stormveil Castle, because the room and the environment here just oozes with creepy atmosphere. There's a ton of other things I could talk about with Stormveil because it's such a massive area. Not only is the main path plentiful in content, but there's even more to do inside and secret sections. But if I did mention it all, we'd be here all day. So let me just say, Stormveil is incredible. Farum Azula isn't the most unique necessarily, since it really reminds me a lot of Archdragon Peak, but it's better than Archdragon Peak in just about every single way. I don't like the spammy snake bugs in Archdragon. I love killing these furries in Azula. The colors in Archdragon are just a bit bland, it kinda hurts my eyes to look at. The visuals in Azula are a lot better. I like the use of reds with the trees, and the tornado is obviously cool. Archdragon also has one amazing boss and one shit fucking boss, whereas Farum Azula has 3 solid fights. Okay, I know everyone despises Godskin Duo. I personally just find it really fun for some reason. I know it's a hot take, but everyone else is just wrong. I'm the one who's right. And after that you get 2 even more fun bosses. Even if the run back for Dragon Lord is annoying for no real reason, they could have just put a Stake of Marika here. I mean, why not? That's the sole purpose of them. Another thing that prevents this from being the absolute best area in the game is honestly the dragons. I like the one that has low HP because he has low HP. You just walk up to the lizard and kill it. But good lord, the dragons at full health are a drag. It takes forever to kill them and they're not really that fun. But the beastmen are some of my favorite enemies in the game, so that balances it out. They're just the right amount of fast and spammy to be engaging without getting obnoxious. With faster builds I can match their aggression, and with slower builds I don't have too much trouble either since they don't have ridiculous poise. In the middle of the area we get the toughest of all knight type enemies in the game, especially the dual wielding fuckboys. I can't wrap my head around how to deal with them consistently, but overall I'd say the knights are a welcome sight. They offer some variety to the level, which is always a good thing in my book. So it's a fun area to explore, it's a fun area to fight enemies in. It's a great area. Simple as that. Did anyone really expect it to be anything else? Did some madman think I was not gonna put Leyndell as number 1? Of course I would put it as number 1, because it is the best area in the game, if not in the whole series. I remember walking into the Ringed City for the first time. I looked around in awe thinking, wow, I can't wait to explore those distant structures over there. And I was pretty disappointed that a lot of the city was just there for backdrop. You can't really explore most of it. But when you reach the capital, you see it, you can go there. Even the giant dragon carcass is a piece of the level. While this place doesn't have that many new and exciting enemies, they're mostly knights, so that's a win anyway. And with the jump in Elden Ring, you can approach the city in numerous different ways. The quickest and safest way is by jumping across the rooftops, but I usually don't do that because I don't want to miss a single room along the way. This is the kind of area that I'm perfectly happy clearing out completely of enemies. I haven't really needed to mention visuals, but I guess they kinda have to be. It's beautiful, duh. And it has that sort of serene, dreamlike feel to it. I will go as far as to say that this is just objectively the most impressive area FromSoft has made. Sure, you can enjoy other areas more, and even I myself might as well, but I doubt any of them have been crafted this well with such massive scope and intricate details everywhere. I'm not saying it's flawless and perfect, of course it isn't. Sometimes it gets a little ganky with enemies that hide behind their shields, and that's not my cup of tea. But for what it gets right, it's excessively great. And I like that its progression ends up taking you high across giant roots until you reach the Erdtree itself. It feels like the peak of the game in more ways than one. Leyndell, best area in the game, there it is.